Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking all about Giving Tuesday and giving you some ways to start thinking about setting up campaigns and already getting on the radar of all of the people that you want to reach come November. I'm joined today by my colleague, Michaela. So some quick intros. I'm Isa Hasty. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager here at Feathr. My goal is just to help nonprofits understand how to leverage digital marketing tools and channels and strategies to better meet your goals. So whether that's driving donations for Giving Tuesday, general donation appeals year round, recruiting members, event attendance, things like that. My goal is to help you understand how you can use digital marketing to make those things happen and hit higher ROI goals and all of those things. I'll pass it over to Michaela for an intro.
Hello, I'm Michaela Tobin. I am a lead digital campaign strategist and a pro strategist here at Feathr. So I'm basically just a Feathr super user. I am an assistant to our customers when they need some extra help on campaigns, helping folks set up groups, monitor results, and things of that nature. So much more on the services side of the platform.
I'm super excited to have you here because obviously you work closely with our customers, so you understand the pain points, you understand the strategies they use that work and don't work, and you also use the platform all the time. So you have lots of technical expertise, so really happy to have you on here to share all of those insights.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Cool. So let's go through some quick agenda items and then we can dive in. So quick note, we will be sending out the recording and the slide deck, so be on the lookout for those in your inbox tomorrow morning. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat along the way and we'll get to them as we can. And then, so we're going to start off by talking about this sort of whole new landscape of giving. And this applies to all of the giving campaigns that you might be running, but we'll talk about it specifically in the context of Giving Tuesday, just sort of how the donor demographics have shifted and what you need to be thinking about. And then we will do a quick section on why it's important to start planning now. So we've already touched on that a little bit. We want to just kind of hone in on that idea of the importance of starting earlier rather than later. We'll go over some tools and channels that you should be using to maximize results for Giving Tuesday. We're going to talk through some real examples that Feathr customers have run in the Feathr platform to get results for Giving Tuesday. And then we will talk a little bit about how you can continue to engage with the people who come to your site on or around Giving Tuesday, but don't necessarily give. Those are still people that are primed for hearing your messaging and might give later. And so there's plenty of ways to continue engaging those people and hopefully convert them down the line. So let's start by talking about this sort of new landscape of giving. So before I dive into this, I want to plug our next webinar that's actually coming up in 2 weeks. So in 2 Wednesdays from now, we're going to be doing a whole webinar completely around this topic of reaching millennials, reaching Gen Z, converting this younger generation into donors. It's obviously very challenging for a number of reasons that we'll get into in a minute. But drop a yes in the chat if that sounds like a webinar that you would find valuable, and we can share the link for you to register. So drop yes if you think you would attend a webinar all about reaching younger donors and converting them. But let's dive into this. So according to the Millennial Impact Report, which explores how younger people, Gen Z, millennials are engaging with cause-based organizations, they say that millennials, they want to give and serve, and they have a desire to do so, but they're also not interested in spending time on shallow involvement. They want it to be impactful and meaningful. And so they're harder to convert to donors for a variety of reasons. So this is making it difficult for a lot of nonprofits to create that sustainable growth. You want to be converting these donors, you want to be turning the next generation of donors into donors as soon as possible, but it can be harder to get young people on board with your cause right away. And so it requires different approaches than you might have used for older generations or previous generations. So 2 of the key factors in this are that trust is simply harder earned for younger generations. They simply don't trust institutions and organizations in the way that their parents or their grandparents did. And so simply telling them that you need their money and that it's going to go to a good cause and that you need their support, that's just not enough to convince them anymore. And so the first bullet, so this lack of trust for organizations, is really closely connected to the second one, which is basically that young people don't trust these institutions for a variety of reasons. And one of those is that they feel like they've failed them in terms of like their financial situations. And so a lot of people just don't have the kind of financial security and sustainability that they feel their parents or grandparents might have had. And so because of this, they don't trust those systems and also just don't have that same amount of kind of disposable income to spend on things that are non-essential. And so they're going to be more wary of giving away to a cause, especially if they're not even sure they trust that cause yet. So let's dive a little bit more deeply into each of these 2 points. So,
Isa, I just wanted to throw in too, it's also worth noting that the baby boomer generation, which was previously known as the largest generation, has now been exceeded by millennials. So not only is it prominent because they're coming up, but it's also the largest generation available to us to be marketing to.
Yep, for sure. It's not just the future because they're there and they're young. It's that they're literally the largest group that you need to be targeting. Right. So can't be avoided. Cool. So like we just said, one of the key differences between millennials and previous generations is that they just don't trust organizations and systems and institutions in the same way. And they would rather support people and issues and engage in like connections with people than engage in sort of partisan politicking and other systems that they might consider to be outdated. And then another interesting point, I know, Michaela, you and I talked about this, is that technology is a huge piece of this equation. I think historically, other generations maybe didn't trust the giving platforms and the technology that went into like scalable giving, but they did trust the institutions and organizations making the ask. And now it's almost been flipped on its head, where it's like we, younger people trust the technology. We're down to like give on, peer-to-peer or like just give on platforms, but don't necessarily trust the ask itself. And so you sort of
like it's almost as easier asked to be recurring to just due to convenience.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, just kind of figuring out, the right way to tell your story. And we'll get into a little bit more about like storytelling and how to balance emotional storytelling with facts to really resonate. But yeah, it's about figuring out what works for you and balancing the sort of like, okay, young people trust the technology, you can reach them in all of these places online, but how do you actually create messaging that's compelling enough to make them trust you? And then a couple other points here, millennials and Gen Z are heavily influenced by coworkers and friends and other personal connections when it comes to things like giving and volunteering. So again, just back to that personal connection and relationship and trust-based giving is a huge, huge piece of the equation. And then to that second point about just having less spare change to go around. So, we all have seen changes happening economically over the last few years. Since 2019, rent increased across the US by 30.4%, and wage growth didn't match that. It was only at 20.2%. So I felt that. Michaela, I'm sure you felt that. I'm sure a lot of people on this call have. And a lot of millennials might have a mortgage, but they have student loans and there's general inflation. So it goes without saying that there's just less money to give to causes. Like that's just kind of a fact. And then if they're not even sure if they trust your organization in the first place, because you haven't built that trust over time, they're even less likely to give you that money that they don't even feel they have. So it's a lot of challenges all kind of coupled together. But there are ways to engage millennials in ways that will actually resonate with them more. And by nurturing those relationships over time, you can build the kind of trust that will lead them to become, repeat donors in the future or bigger ticket donors later on. And one interesting thing that Millennial Impact Report also reported on was that one thing that sets millennials and Gen Z apart from Gen X and boomers is that they view all of their assets. So this is time, money, their social network, leadership skills and ideas, things like that. They value all of these on the same level, which means that giving isn't the only way that younger people know to contribute. So this might make them harder to convert to donors right away because they might think, okay, well, I have other ways that I can contribute that aren't just giving money. And so you kind of have to learn how to meet them where they're at and figure out multiple ways to help them support your cause. And then research also shows that they prefer to perform smaller actions before fully committing to a cause. So that kind of fits in with that, previous point, is that there's multiple ways that you can contribute to something, multiple ways you can engage with a cause, and younger people exhibit signs of wanting to engage in smaller ways over time before making a bigger commitment. So all of these things can be really meaningful for your nonprofit. Even if someone's not giving right away, they can still engage in ways that are promising for later on. So I'll pass it over to Michaela to talk through how this all fits into Giving Tuesday.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Issa. So I'm seeing too in the audience, we have a couple people commenting that they're in the Gen Z generation and can relate to some of these things. So I think as we go through this, just think about also what's in your own mind, like what would make you convert to a donor, like what is important to you, because that can translate into your audience as well. But how this all fits into Giving Tuesday, and we'll definitely get into some examples later, is that transparency and clarity are the key in communicating with your audience. So we want to be transparent about what we're doing as an organization, where the money is going if you become a donor, and like how you're helping the community specifically to engage folks and get them to trust what you're doing in the world. So we know in the past, like emotional storytelling, of course, is useful and important and gets the point across. But we're challenging everyone here today to also think about hard facts in marketing. That can be in statistics, dollar impact statements, and just thinking about the flow of your messaging. So what do you do? And then how can someone help? So I think there was maybe a previous idea, or I see this a lot, where advertising is very like X organization helps your community. And then it stops at that. And it's like, well, how are you helping our community? What are you doing? And how is my money going to help with that? So instead of being vague, being really direct. So it's like, instead of we're helping our community, think like we're feeding our community, and $25 from you helps feed X amount of families for a week. So that kind of like puts those things together. You're being very clear about what you're doing as an organization, and then very clear about how you're helping, and then very clear about how the community can help you help those people. Statistics is also good. It's great for a hook. It gives people more information, especially affecting direct communities. So this other example, 1 in 4 women is a victim of domestic violence. Like then having some type of hook to learn more that brings folks to your website, gets them engaged, and then you're later teaching them this is what we're doing to combat that statistic. And here's how, again, your money can help us combat that statistic.
Yeah, and I think, younger people definitely want that transparency and authenticity, but everyone does, right? I mean, I think like when you think about big ticket donors who donate lots of money, they definitely want to know that money is going to a cause that they have been promised it's going toward. They want to know that there's like reliable processes happening on the back end, and that they're not just handing out money. And so I think that idea of being transparent and straightforward about what your cause is, what you're doing, where donations are going is important for everybody, not just for younger generations. And then we have an example here that I wanted to touch on real quick. So this is from an organization called Buckner International. So they serve children and families all over the world. And this is from one of their donor acquisition campaigns called Shoes for Orphans. And they had historically used ads like this one on the left, which were just like photos of kids receiving the shoes. And they wanted to A/B test this against this more organic style text ad. So they were running all of these on Facebook, and they just wanted to see, is this kind of ad that's just asking like very directly for exactly what they need and explaining where it's going, is this going to perform better? First of all, because it looks more organic, it looks more like it's going to fit into like organic social as opposed to this one, which looks more like a paid ad. But also will just the transparency and straightforwardness of making a direct ask and including some facts and some numbers, will this be more effective? And they found that this ad here, the text ad, converted at twice the rate of the photo ad. So proved the point that this is just more effective these days. So whenever you can be, it's not to say you can't use photos. Like obviously if photos perform well for you, you should do what works for you. But A/B testing things and trying new things, trying text versus, mainly photos or visuals, like this can be super insightful to just kind of test different things with the same audience. They did this on Facebook, same audience parameters, same budget behind each one, and they found that one performed much better than the other. And so that's not to say they'll stop using these, but just to say that these performed better, and just, I think, continuing to iterate on findings like that, and test things out is important. And that comes back to the point of starting early, because the earlier you start, the more you can test things. And, if you find good results, great. And if not, it doesn't work and you can pivot. So starting as early as possible just allows you a lot more room for getting experimental, which can provide great results. Cool. And then some more.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pause Issa just to answer, comment on a couple of things in the chat here. So we have a question about how do we use this tactic when the work is on advocacy versus services. I think this can still be applied if I'm understanding correctly, like when we're talking more broader advocacy, there still might be information statistics that could be a hook for people to understand that you're spreading the word about something. If you're not in a situation where you can clearly state like $25 feeds a family, I think there's other ways to approach dollar impact statements that can still help someone understand where their money is going. So, I've had clients before where it's like $25 doesn't really do anything. It's like, we need the $10,000 to do the project, right? So what I would recommend in that scenario is saying like, here's our goal in advertising. Like, our goal is $10,000 by the end of the year. Your $25 helps us get there. And still preemptively, as you're nurturing and cultivating that audience, leading to that point of that type of advertising, you're explaining, where is that $10,000 going? Hopefully that answers that question. If there's not, like a very direct small dollar impact statement, I think telling what your overarching goal is and still calling out like a smaller number for people just makes it an easier ask, especially when we're coming up to, obviously this webinar is focused on Giving Tuesday. That's a huge give day. So if you can put that dollar amount there and say, we're looking for, $25 across X amount of people, like help us out for this goal, then that can be a way to apply a dollar impact statement. With that being said, on this slide, so reiterating basically what I just said, giving people an easier, smaller way to contribute. So smaller amounts in ads, at least for first-time donors. Obviously, later on, like the goal after that is to continue to nurture and hopefully turn people into recurring donors and like major donors for your organization. But getting started, easy ask, this is what you're doing. It's almost like that instant gratification that younger generations love. It's like $25, I fed 5 families, just using that example again. Also, gift matching campaigns can be super powerful. So it's like if you donate $5, that's getting matched. So now really $10 is going. So I think that's really helpful. We definitely want to give thanks to donations, no matter the amount, and stay in contact with these donors over time. So later in the presentation, Issa and I will get into some hard examples within Feathr about how to follow up with folks later. But if I gave $25, it may not be the biggest impact there, but it's still an impact. And I think to be told thank you or continue to be engaged, people are so much more likely to give again and give later. And of course, reiterating what you're doing with folks' donations. So we can do that on the front end to get people to donate. And then later, sharing an impact report through emails and ads, updating, more than just updating a page on your website, like actually sharing that with folks. So maybe post Giving Tuesday, an email goes out to your donor base that says, hey, here's what you did to help our community, or here's what you did to support our organization and what we're doing in the world.
And Lisa, to answer your question here in the chat, I've seen stats indicating that a gift matching campaign can improve engagement by like 4x, 5x. So you can get a lot more participation if people know that their gift is going to be matched. And obviously, like the standard gift matching is to, like twice the amount, but I've seen like 3x gift matching. So you can get creative with that. Depending on what you're working with, but they can be highly impactful.
Yeah, and I think I missed Luke's comment also, having concerns around text-based ads because of oversaturation. Ultimately, it does come down to experimentation, and I think a big thing that you could do is actually do both and see how they compare. Luckily, within the Feathr platform, you're able to side-by-side compare click-through rates and things of that nature, so you could see how emotional photo ad compares to text ad. The one thing I can say for certain is that you don't want to have a messy text ad. You want to keep it short and sweet. That's why I think even like a straight statistic, 1 in 4 women suffer from domestic violence, learn more, like that's the entire hook to get people in. And then once they're on your website, now you're giving more information about your org. So you want to be careful on text heavy. You don't want 120 characters on a slide that someone can't read for sure. But I think experimenting with some of those text call to actions or text informational ads is beneficial in tandem with some other approaches.
Cool. So let's get into, again, why you should start earlier rather than later when it comes to planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So building awareness, of course, is half the battle. So we need to build brand awareness with new audiences in the months leading up to Giving Tuesday. We want to build familiarity, get information out, educating your audience. That's educating your potential donors, your potential volunteers, your potential engagement. So we want to start building awareness early on your org. Trying to reach a cold audience on November 1st is just going to be challenging to get them to the point of donating. I use this example a lot with some of my clients is, you know, if you're a 501c3 hosting an in-person event, it's very unlikely that you just walk up to someone on the street and say, can you give me $50? Like, you're going to have your booth, informational package. You're going to be talking to someone, get them to sign up for your newsletter, get them to do something else. Maybe they would donate on the spot, but the reality is even in person, it's like you want to explain what you're up to and tell people about your good work. So the same idea translates to digital. So we want to kind of build this up the months leading into Giving Tuesday so that people are already kind of primed for the ask, especially when the giving season is so noisy. So to build trust during that time is so challenging because there are a lot of organizations doing the same thing. So the earlier approach gets us to that point. Now they're familiar with your org. If you're using the Feathr platform and folks have been to your website, they're getting targeted ads for your cause. So yeah, I think we can move to the next. And then growing awareness means conversions will follow. So this image here is an example of what we call a flight in Feathr. So we have a phased approach to getting people to conversion. So the outlined box there is our awareness phase. Then we move to kind of what we call mid-funnel and then direct appeals. So the goal of these awareness campaigns is exactly that. It's awareness. So like the KPI there is getting views out, reaching folks, getting clicks. We don't expect direct conversions from that, but what we do expect is now people have seen an ad, potentially clicked on it, visited your website, and now we're moving them into the next bucket and can continue to retarget them with more education, more tailored messaging. And then of course, at the point of Giving Tuesday, end of year giving, or whatever other appeal you're working on, we're able to drive that donate call to action to these folks.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the tools and channels that you should be employing now and leading up to Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is a great way to bring in donations. It's obviously a well-known day. People are excited about, Giving Tuesday, and also it's close to the holiday season when people tend to just generally feel more community oriented and more willing to spend money. So it's a great time to be putting your cause out there and trying to bring in donations. But like Michaela said, it's also a very noisy time. So, people might be more likely to give, but that is if they actually see your message. So if the inbox is the only place that you're reaching people, you might not be able to stand out there among all of the other, retail companies, other nonprofits, other organizations that are also in the inbox. And this is the hard part because people are just so primed to see marketing and advertising toward the end of the year. And so they're expecting all of that, but they can't keep up with it. Inbox fatigue is very real. And so it means that you need to think more strategically, and multi-channel marketing is a really good way to be showing up for people in the places where they are and where they'll be more likely to notice you. And also just gradually, showing up, like staying on their radar over time, just gently nudging them to kind of continue engaging with your cause. So of course, you do want to send emails as part of your Giving Tuesday campaign, since that channel does tend to convert at high rates for nonprofits. But again, it just might not be the only place that you want to be, because you might not stand out there. So targeted ads are a really good way to cut through the noise, approaching Giving Tuesday and year round, because it means that your donors and your potential donors will see you even if they're not seeing you in the inbox. And so with the right digital advertising platform and strategy, your ads are going to be showing up on the websites that the people that you're trying to reach are already on. And so maybe that's, scrolling on Facebook, maybe they're looking up Thanksgiving recipes approaching Giving Tuesday, things like that, maybe doing some early holiday shopping. So wherever they are, they're going to see your ads. And then of course, supporting this with an email marketing strategy makes sense. So for the people whose email addresses you do have, you want to be emailing them, but digital advertising and, programmatic ads just allow you to get thousands of new relevant eyes on your cause, and then engage with them over time in that sort of gentle, more subtle way to stay on their radar without bombarding their inbox. And yeah, you don't ever want to be bombarding people. We highly encourage you to start as early as possible with Giving Tuesday, but it doesn't mean emailing people every week starting in July about giving, in November. And so just kind of, like Michaela mentioned, just making sure that you're promoting the right sort of messaging to the right people and just educating them on your cause, just like reminding them of why you exist and how they can help and contribute. And then coming in with those sort of harder asks later on, closer to the day. And then, besides digital advertising and email, you might do paid ads on social, some organic social mailers if they work for your audience. I know we talked about that as well, Michaela, like receiving, I think like direct mail doesn't necessarily convert younger audiences, but we still sometimes like receiving something in the mail. So it's a fun option for a thank you. And if mailers do work for converting some of your older donors, keep doing that. Don't stop things that are working.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, multifaceted approaches are going to be the most successful. So, I know Next After has put some things out about hitting all. And honestly, if you're an online donor, I think you're more likely to interact with mailer too, versus the opposite. So it was funny. We were joking about how so much is online. It's like a treat to get mail these days. So I feel like a thank you note physically could go a long way.
For sure. Also, I just saw someone asked in here what the date is. That's my bad. It is December 3rd, not end of November. I'm so used to it being end of November, but this year's Giving Tuesday is December 3rd. So thanks for clarifying that, Shannon. Okay, now let's get into a little bit about how you actually can run these digital ads and target people who visited your site with targeted ads. So we all know that marketing, nowadays is only effective if it's based on accurate data. And so there is a time and a place for leveraging third-party data, but first-party data is the most reliable and also the least expensive to obtain and to work with. So this means that you're using software, so it can be a platform like Feathr, to collect your own data on your audience, how they're engaging with your website, what pages they're visiting, how many times, how they're engaging with your ad and email campaigns and things like that. Whether they're making a donation when they visit the page or not. So to collect this data, you have to install what's called a tracking pixel on your web properties. And so in Feathr, we call this a super pixel. And this gives you tons of information, like I said, about what your website visitors are doing when they hit your site and when they engage with your ad and email campaigns. And this just gives you insight so that you can target them in more personalized ways based on what they actually did versus like a spray and pray sort of approach to just putting the same message out there for everyone to see. So let's think about it a little bit in terms of growing and nurturing your audience leading up to Giving Tuesday, while it's still months away, right? So now is the perfect time to run some audience expansion campaigns, and we'll get into a few of those specific examples in a bit. These are all about just getting your cause on the radar of new people and bringing them to your website for that first time to learn more, know who you are, what you do. And like we mentioned before, these aren't about conversions. They're just about expanding your audience, and then the nurturing and the conversions happen later. And Michaela kind of touched on this, but people require more than one interact, like with the example of an event where you're talking to somebody who's just learned about your organization. They may give, but probably not. They need to have multiple touch points with you. Same applies to digital. So, they might need to see multiple ads and visit your site a few different times and see you on social media, and then they're more likely to give. It's rare that somebody will donate to a cause that they just learned about versus one that they trust and have heard about from peers and things like that. And so once someone has seen that first ad from you, click through to your site, if you have a Super Pixel installed, you can capture all of that data on what they're doing on your site. And then once they leave, you can now serve ads to them as they browse the web and go to other websites. So if they didn't give you their email, they are still an anonymous visitor, but you can target them with those ads. And ideally, they come back to your site, click through on one of those ads, come back, maybe they visit your donate page, but don't make a donation. So then that would be a good time to get even more personalized and say, like, show some messaging around actually making a donation, maybe make a little bit more of a direct appeal. And then, so like just based on what they're actually doing on your site, you can tailor your messaging to, just feel more personalized and relevant to what they've done.
So I think that the metric, just to put some perspective, is probably, I'd say like 5 to 10 years ago, it was like 5 to 7 touch points was like the magic number for marketing. And now it's really like 10 to 15. So we want to be hitting people multiple times at multiple points in the funnel, and getting folks to your website to begin with is already so powerful because now they're in the smaller bucket and basically easier to reach by these display ads.
For sure. And we'll get into this a little bit more at the end of the presentation, but having the Super Pixel installed on your site is also really cool because it lets you get more out of all of that traffic that comes to your website around and on Giving Tuesday. So that you're going to see a spike in traffic leading up to Giving Tuesday and on the day, but not all of those people are going to give. Because again, there's a variety of reasons why people might be interested in your cause but not able to give in that moment. But those are still people who are primed for your cause. They're interested, they're engaging with your site and your ads. And so they're people who might give later on. And by having the Pixel installed and being able to track people who do come to your site on that day, you can then continue to reach them with ads later on. And that can be really cool because December is a month full of other giving opportunities. And so you might have your Giving Tuesday appeal, and if someone doesn't give then, they still might donate to a holiday drive later on in the month, or even in January or February. So just continuing to engage with people who have shown interest and not just letting that day be the last time you ever talk to them, right? Just because they didn't give. And then segmentation is another, big part of getting personalized in your marketing. And Michaela is going to talk about community building in Feathr later on and go into more detail about how you can actually create very specific segments in Feathr to nurture people, around Giving Tuesday and beyond. But segmentation is crucial leading up to Giving Tuesday as well. So, the way that you speak to somebody who has only been to your website one time versus the way you talk to someone who's visited your website 4 different times and they've been to your donate page but haven't made a donation yet, you want to be giving them different messaging, right? And so having a platform that makes it easy to segment your web visitors in this way, so that you can display, highly tailored, personalized messaging to people based on what they've done. This is a game changer for just getting more personalized in a way that's not too time consuming. So having a platform that makes it easy is key. And then one last slide for this section before we dive into some specific examples. I just wanted to talk about flights. So I know we kind of showed one of these on an earlier slide and highlighted the awareness campaign. But flights are basically what we call campaign plans in Feathr. And they're a really good way to structure your initiatives in general, but I think they can be very helpful for something like Giving Tuesday because you have your awareness, nurture, conversion campaigns, but you're also thinking about, different audience segments already. You have past donors who might give again. You have attendees to community events. And then you have all of these new people who've never heard of you before that you're going to run expansion campaigns to. So there's just so much going on, lots of different goals associated with these different campaigns. And so to be able to put them all in one place that's just visually easy to understand is helpful and can be a nice time saver and just help with reporting and tracking. And so, a flight is basically just a group of these campaigns in Feathr that are working toward a specific goal or initiative. And so if you already use Feathr and you don't use flights yet, it's all of the campaigns and channels that you're already used to, just grouped together in this way that's just more intuitive and clearer to understand. And then we also have some out-of-the-box templates just to kind of make it easy to get started. And these are based on some of the common use cases we've seen for nonprofits. So donation appeals, so you could use our donation flight for Giving Tuesday, obviously. We have a general awareness template, event marketing, and more. So, and real quick, let's think about how Giving Tuesday would fit into a flight like this. So if a person visits your website as a result of an expansion campaign that you run on that, left-hand side of the funnel, so the awareness side, you might have, that person has been to your site, and so they're now in your reachable audience to serve ads to, right? And so, you might have a couple of retargeting campaigns later on in the flight that serve ads to anyone who visited your site, which means that new person would be funneled into those campaigns automatically because they meet that criteria. They visited your site, they're now in the retargeting campaign. So they might then go on to see a few more of your ads through those retargeting campaigns around the web, and then eventually click back to your site again. And so while the initial ad they saw might be more generic or educational, just trying to get them to click through in the first place, a retargeting ad might just be more specific, say something about a donation, or be one of those educational ads, just like informing people a little bit more about the cause and kind of like pulling them in a little bit more. And then, if somebody ends up visiting your donate page, you would then target them with, you can set up a campaign for people who have visited your donate page, retarget them with ads. And so basically, like, the way that you set this up ensures that people are properly being funneled into the next campaign that applies to them, so there's nothing manual about this. It's like you select the segments that you want each campaign to apply to, and then they will sort of funnel through it themselves. I think we often think about the funnel as like everybody is coming through each phase at the same time together, and that's simply not how it happens. Each individual person who's interacting with your brand is going through their own journey. And so flights kind of help ensure that each person is moving into the right campaign for them, and people are moving at different speeds and paces, and someone might give early on, someone might take a year to give, you don't know. And so having something like this set up is just helpful to make it all feel a little bit more manageable and visualize it.
Yeah, I think your comment, Issa, kind of plays into a question that Emily posted that said, am I understanding correctly, it takes 10 to 15 touch points before somebody typically gives to an organization? So as Issa was saying, of course, like everybody's donor journey is different and you're going to have variance, but that is a comfortable number when you're starting with someone completely green. So you have to think like someone who's maybe never heard of you before, they hear of you, we're making them aware. That's going to take a few touch points. Now we've gotten them to your website. We want to cultivate them. What does that mean? We're sending them education to your blog, giving them more information about what you're doing to help. So that's going to be multiple touch points. Email and other types of marketing can be worked into this, not just display, it's just like general touch points. Then we're getting someone to their high intent point. We're telling them more information, hoping to get them to the give, and then you have the appeal. So yes, 10 to 15 is a comfortable touch point for someone starting green. Of course, some people go quicker than that. Some people go slower than that, but that is a current comfortable place to think on impressions or touch points.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of people ask, I know Rachel just answered this in the chat, but we will be sending the webinar recording and the slide deck out tomorrow. So check your email inbox for that tomorrow morning. It will be there. So before we dive into the next section, which hopefully will be helpful with just some real campaign examples, I wanted to note that, we're still almost 5 months out from Giving Tuesday. And so this means that you have plenty of time to set up a tracking pixel, run awareness campaigns, do all of this stuff that we're talking about, segment your audience, get personalized. Plenty of time to do that in time for December 3rd. If you're interested in learning more about how Feathr can help you do these things, drop a 1 in the chat and we'll connect you with somebody who can answer your questions, meet with you, any team members that you want to bring on, and help you come up with a marketing plan. And like I said, we'll talk at the end too about how Feathr can help you get more out of your Giving Tuesday traffic, well beyond December. And so those web visitors are interested in your cause and they might need more nurturing, and Feathr also makes it super easy to continue engaging with people over time. So if it would be helpful to talk to somebody and get some questions answered, drop a 1 in the chat and we would love to help you come up with a plan. Cool. Alrighty. let's move on to some real life examples. So again, these are all campaigns that have been run in Feathr. So some of them are campaigns that, customers have run on their own. Michaela has helped and support and run some of these campaigns as well. So it's a good mix. But these are all Feathr campaigns that have proven successful for Giving Tuesday and end of year giving. So let's start with this one from United Way of Asheville and Buncombe County. So this is their 2023 Giving Tuesday holiday book drive. And I wanted to start with this one just because I think it's really it's simple, but it's powerful. So we're going to see some more robust campaigns in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to show you that, with a relatively low lift, you can actually run a really impactful Giving Tuesday campaign and get in front of thousands of new relevant people, bring them to your site, retarget them over time. And so, yeah, this is, let's see here. Okay. So this is the flight. And again, it's relatively simple. There's just 4 campaigns in here. There's these 2 awareness campaigns, which we'll dive into in a second, and then a retargeting campaign to nurture interest, and then a more direct appeal to drive those online donations. And so the mobile geofencing one was targeting the Asheville Mall. Well, actually, let's just go to the next slide. Okay. So as a quick refresher, geofencing allows you to serve ads to people in a specific physical location. So you identify what area that you want to target and within what time frame, and you can show ads to people on their mobile devices when they're in that area. So this is just a visual of, this is a zoomed in version of what that looks like. So they targeted these areas in Asheville. This was a mall, a shopping mall around the holidays. So just kind of try and capture anyone who's just like doing some shopping in December. And they showed ads to people who were in this area in the weeks leading up to Giving Tuesday. And then this is one of the ads that they used. So you can kind of see what that looked like here. And then affinity targeting. So this is a really cool campaign type. Affinity campaigns let you reach net new people who match your ideal audience in some way that you get to choose. So this can be, that their search history has terms that are relevant to what you offer, or they've made a purchase in a relevant industry or donated to a similar organization. You can get into demographic or behavioral information like net worth or past donations as well. So in this campaign, United Way just wanted to reach people who have a high affinity for buying books. So people who have bought from Barnes & Noble, since they'd be some of the people most likely to have books to donate to a book drive, right? And again, you can see a couple of the ads here that they used. And then for the retargeting campaigns, they served ads like the one on the right here to anyone who had visited their hands-on Asheville page. So this is basically just their volunteer page or the donate page. So she included a couple of different sort of higher intent pages to serve ads to people who had visited those pages because that seemed to her to be a high intent of engagement and wanting to participate and potentially give. And then you can see the results here. So this Giving Tuesday campaign that I just showed was part of an overall end of year campaign. So these are the results in terms of new people reached and clicks from just the Giving Tuesday campaign alone. So they had almost 3,000 new people reached, 61 clicks to the site. So that's 61 new people who didn't know about them before, now know about them, that they can also retarget, right? And then the overall end of year campaign was super successful. So they reached 50,000 new people, got 376 clicks to the site, and they brought in just over $2,500 in donations, but that was compared to 470 the previous year. And the number of donors was obviously higher too. So these numbers are related to the overall campaign, and they also made other changes as well. But this customer was sure that the ads that they ran in Feathr had impacted this difference in donations year over year. So great results there. And then this second example here is from the Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin. So this is their 2022 end of year donation campaign. So this isn't a Giving Tuesday campaign, but I think there's definitely some takeaways here that you can apply to Giving Tuesday. So you can see that this one has a few more campaigns than the previous example, but it's still relatively straightforward. So on the awareness side here, they ran an affinity campaign. a couple of CRM retargeting campaigns, geofencing, and then they have a tracked link campaign here, which brought in some campaign data from ads that they were running separately on Facebook or directly on Facebook. And then they did a couple of retargeting campaigns here, which we'll dive into. So because large gifts can be so impactful and make such a difference in a donation campaign, the food bank ran an affinity campaign using this top 10 charitable donor category here, which pulls people who are in the top 10% of capital investors in the US, or they've shown other indicators that they donate large amounts to charity. So again, this affinity campaign type, which you can run in Feathr, lets you pull this third-party data and target people who fit those criteria. And on the right here, you can see some of the ads that they ran in this campaign. And I think these are just nice looking, cute ads. So for a little bit of inspo here. And then for the CRM retargeting campaign, and for Feathr users, you know this as email mapping, but a lot of people know it as CRM retargeting. They uploaded a list of about 20,000 email addresses associated with people who had previously donated to their organization. So they were then able to target the people associated with those email addresses with ads wherever they were scrolling online. So they're using the email as the identifier, but they're serving ads just like you do in a retargeting or other display ad campaign. And the goal was to get them to come back and give again. And so again, coming back to that issue of, the inbox being too full around the holidays, you do want to be emailing people, especially past donors. They might respond well to emails, but it's not guaranteed because email fatigue is real. And so being able to use their email addresses to reach them in another way using digital ads is really cool. And so CRM retargeting is a great channel for reaching people in another way and just kind of surrounding them with your message across different platforms. So, Okay, and then for this this high donor intent campaign. So again, this is just sort of picking the pages on your site that you think indicate that someone is primed to donate or very invested, and retargeting them with ads. So this time frame, as you can see here, was 120 days. So anybody who's visited any of these pages in the last 120 days and clicked an ad is included here. And they received ads basically just with a direct appeal, encouraging them to make a donation. And real quick, some results here. So they reached almost 109,000 new people through these expansion campaigns, got over 3,000 clicks to their site from new people, and they raised over $8,500 in donations. So that's a great number. And yeah, some really successful results here for this food bank. Cool. I will pass it over to Michaela for some examples.
Thanks. I just saw a question pop up about where would these ads appear. I thought I would answer quick. So within Feathr, we're not placing ads on specific websites. We're following your audience. So we're partnered with folks who have like various different websites that people would visit. So we're not saying like, hey, we're posting this ad on the weather channel page. It's saying your customer came to your website and then they went to the weather channel page and that's why they saw that ad on that page. So we're actually following the user and not just randomly posting ads on various websites. As far as social goes, we do also do meta retargeting and email mapping. So we do have social options. That's also based on your audience, and then they can see those things on Meta, on Instagram and Facebook. How did they reach all of those new people? We have various cold audience campaigns. So new people are coming from some of the things that Issa just went over. So an affinity campaign, which can be used to find demographics, industry lists, and what am I missing? In market for lists. We have some geofencing. I know she mentioned where we drop a pin on a location and serve there. We also have a keyword search campaign, which is folks searching words and phrases online, and we're able to target them that way. We're finding these people based on these attributes, and so they are anonymous. So this is why it's important to like get them to your website, get them engaged, hopefully capturing information by donation or a newsletter or some other type of form, because they are an anonymous cookie floating around that we're following until they volunteer up their information. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and dive into a couple more. So I know Isa was so great at going over a couple of examples and kind of primarily focusing on that top funnel or cold campaign. So the next few examples are a little shorter. I want to focus more on the messaging, and these are mid to late funnels. So we're talking retargeting. This is a warmed up audience. So the first customer is Open Doors Canada. They're a faith-based organization that we have here at Feathr. Just to reiterate, we've shown this image before, but this is directly from Open Doors Flight. So you can see they're phased out campaigns. We have the awareness leg, the mid funnel leg, and then the final leg with appeals. So I want to call out a couple of ads that they had live. So the first one, and just let me pause and say, these are actually not direct Giving Tuesday ads, but this is some of the cultivating that happened pre-Giving Tuesday that ultimately led to donations last year. So what I'm showing is these were some of the ads that were mid-funnel, keeping people engaged, and they attributed to donations. And I'll talk about those results on the next slide. But just to highlight, last year, about 4,000 Christians were in prison for their faith. So giving that statistic, giving that hook to get people to click and learn more. The following ad, it was served to a higher intent audience. So folks who had come to that page, now they have the information, and we're encouraging them to click again and come back. And then Join Us has more information about the organization and the option to donate. So let's talk about results. So this specific campaign ran for about a month in the summer to prime up for the end of year. About 1,700 people were reached. We saw 204 clicks on the campaign, and 7 donations were attributed to seeing this campaign. So even earlier in the year, this campaign had some impact on later end of year giving and donations. Okay, perfect. The next customer I'm going to talk about here is Lutheran Child and Family Services. This is a family services organization, and I want to highlight some of their ads as well. So again, these are two kind of stages of the funnel, and what I want to highlight is this top ad is actually highlighting to the customer what the organization has done. So this is later funnel. It's saying, it's like someone's already involved. It's like, here's what we have done so far, and we still need more help. So it's kind of giving that highlight, giving that impact report that we talked about before in advertising. So showing, hey, this is what we've been up to, and we could still use your help. The following ad gives a dollar impact statement, like we mentioned before. So I wanted to show, it says, children often don't have any clothes. Here's what $50 can do. Be a hero, help us today. So again, it's like, here's the problem. We need to clothe these children in foster care. Here's what your money can do, and you can help give today. And I'll also elaborate that it's important that, I don't think we've touched on this yet, Isa, but like that the mission is reinforced throughout the customer journey. So when you come to a donation page, I would encourage that also reiterates what you're saying in advertisements. So having, $50 helps us give X, Y, and Z, maybe having $50 be the default donation amount so that all of these things match throughout the process, and it's a very clear donor journey. So I want to look at the results specific to that dollar impact statement ad. So that campaign was high donor intent. So this was a much warmer audience, and it is currently live. So this is something that is currently running in Feathr. It still has some ways to go, but so far we've reached about 700 people with 142 clicks, and we've already seen a donation off of this campaign at this time, and it went live, I believe, sometime during the summer months. So pretty newly live.
Well, and that donation was 458.
Yes. Yeah, it was a good donation for sure.
Good starting point for sure.
Okay, I have just 2 more examples I want to highlight. So the Food Bank of Northern Nevada is one of our customers that is pretty much a Feathr super user. So they take advantage of Feathr for all their display advertising needs as well as email. I'm going to specifically highlight some messaging that we've experimented with in the past, specific to display ads. So these are 2 examples. This was part of cultivation again. So this does have a donate call to action, but really where this fell, it wasn't tied to a specific Giving Tuesday or end of year appeal. This is something that's kind of running throughout. One of these examples gives a statistic, and again, one of them gives a dollar impact statement. So I just wanted to highlight these so that you could see some examples of these. We also use the same image with some different verbiage so that we could compare how those performed. We can go on to the next. So these are actually specific to end of year giving and Giving Tuesday, and these are match appeals. So the food bank is able to do match campaigns during the holiday season, and they express that in their messaging. Not only do they say $1 here equals 6 meals, they're saying it would provide 3 meals, but because of the match, we're able to provide 6 meals. The match campaigns we've seen a ton of success with for this customer. Even the Giving Tuesday ad alone, without considering the email and additional efforts, had some good results, which is on the next slide. So we'll go over those.
I just saw a comment that these are really nice ads. They do look really good. And there's let's get to that question at the end. Let's finish this.
Okay. So the Giving Tuesday ad itself actually only ran for about a week. So we got this up quickly. Now, don't get me wrong. We had, when we were working with this customer, we had a lot of preemptive planning. So a lot of other messaging leading up, but we had a really strong push only focusing on this match appeal for the week because that's when the match ran. So within the week, we reached about 2,000 people, had 75 clicks, and we saw 9 donations just within that period. So that's more than 1 donation a day. Specific to that campaign. We additionally ran some emails and other things that also brought in donations. So it's really exciting to see that all of the messaging leading up helped get us a lot of success during Giving Tuesday and end of year. I think what's great about a match too is when you are continuously pushing your message, especially around dollar impact. So if you're pushing the message that $1 provides 3 meals, and your warm audience already knows that, if they've donated before and now they know that their $1 provides 6 meals or 9 meals or whatever it may be, that's hugely impactful because they're already donating, and now it's like you can triple your impact. And who's to say they wouldn't double down on their own donation there, you know? So really powerful if you have the capability to do match campaigns as well.
Real quick, a couple of people have asked this now, just around how much you need to spend on ad campaigns like this to yield the results that we're seeing. If you have any insights around ad spend on these.
Yeah, I mean, ad spend is going to vary. It's going to depend on like the size of your audience and things of that nature. We have some metrics in Feathr and like requirements in Feathr specifically on like a minimum spend per day per campaign. So within Feathr, we usually say like $5 per day minimum per campaign, and that's absolute minimum. Colder audiences are a little more expensive to reach, so we encourage that we spend more there. And then Feathr, what's great about the tool is it actually takes into account the targets that you're putting in and recognizes your audience size and can suggest budgets to you. I don't know that I feel comfortable giving a strong number because it depends on how long you're running campaigns, evergreen. You know, I've seen folks for sure have successful campaigns for a couple $1,000s. People will go up to 10, 15, 20 plus $1,000 depending on what's in their budget to spend and the timeline. So I think that can vary. And honestly, Feathr is super helpful at setting budgets for media. So I think that's something to highlight. But ultimately, it is important to spend money on media and marketing to get that out there. There are free resources as well. Email, for example, in Feathr, it does not include or doesn't require any additional media spend. So for budget constrained folks, I often recommend that we do a combo, which we should be doing anyway, right? Multifaceted email and display. But that definitely helps control budget. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Isa. I just think it's very dependent on timelines and audience size and things of that nature.
Absolutely. And somebody else asked about the idea of kind of focusing more on a giving week instead of a giving day, or instead of Giving Tuesday, the actual day, that some people might be kind of hyper focused on the idea of giving on December 3rd, but that you might still be able to get donations in the week surrounding that. And I think that, a lot of what we're talking about is kind of building that awareness over time leading up to that sort of noisy time, like that giving season, right? And so I think that all of the work that you put in up front will cause more people to give around that time, especially if you're starting to ask more directly for donations, in October, November, leading up to Giving Tuesday. And so I'm curious, Michaela, if you have insights specifically around the idea of a formalized giving week versus a day, but I think that you'll probably bring in donations around that time, not necessarily just on that day, through putting in all of this work. And
yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say that everything just comes in right on that day. It's a buildup. And related to the election comment, I think if we're focusing on colder audiences earlier, we're able to get this information out. And once we get down to the wire, for lack of better words, like when we're right at Giving Tuesday, my recommendation there would be to double down or hone in on your warm audience. So that would be like your website visitors, your email list, because those folks are already relevant and they're more likely to see your content because they already fall into this warm bucket. So where the election may, I guess, get in the way during that exact time, maybe cold audiences, which is why starting now is great to start to build that up, get folks to your website. But once they've been to your website, we can retarget from there. So they're already in that bucket. I think there's ways to be clever in messaging without being political also that can be beneficial during this type of season.
For sure. And a couple of people have responded to the questions around budget and spend on ads, and like if these numbers that we're seeing are high enough to offset the actual ad spend. And so the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, whose example you just showed, is actually on this call.
Yeah.
So
Hi,
Erin. Yeah, it's great to see you engaging in the chat here and answering some questions and providing some insights. But like you just said, in this chat here, we're just showing one campaign at a time. And so the one that Michaela showed was just the one ad campaign that's part of a larger flight that has many campaigns, including cart abandonment ones that convert at higher rates, email campaigns that might convert at higher rates. And so we're just showing little snippets here, but obviously the entire campaign resulted in more ROI than what we're showing here for each campaign specific result. So.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Airmel, and hello. I'm glad you could join today. But yeah, just to reiterate, there's a lot more that goes into the whole process, and obviously brings more in. But we wanted to give like little bite-sized pieces of results, and I think that's especially important for folks who have maybe never done this before, who've never like dabbled in display advertising before, or hasn't really marketed for Giving Tuesday or end of year giving. It's important to keep in mind that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so we want to give, some ideas of how you can start to build your audience and get to that point, especially a point of where like Aramel at the food bank is now having amazing, incredible results on her giving.
And she just dropped in the chat also that between the combination of display ad campaigns and the emails that they sent through Feathr, they raised just under $100,000 for that Giving Tuesday campaign. So thanks for that.
Thank you. All right, perfect. We're going to just quickly do one more example. So this customer actually solely focused on email. And I know that Aramel does a lot of email with the food bank too, but I wanted to highlight some of her dollar impact statement ads. But this customer solely focused on email. And to reiterate, Feathr also offers email. It is an email platform as well as a display ad platform. And email doesn't cost any additional media. So with this email series, this is side by side. So they did an email series for Giving Tuesday and an email series for end of year giving. So the full email series here was mirrored by display ads as well. So just to reiterate, this is just like a snippet of the total efforts. There were 7 emails in the Giving Tuesday email series and 12 emails in the end of year giving email series. Total of these, there was 424,000 deliveries. 161,000 opens. We saw just under 1,500 clicks, and this totaled in just over 150 donations from this email campaign. So just a little highlight there on email as well.
Yep. Cool. And this is our last section. I know we've kept you all a little bit over time, but just kind of talking about that that thing we mentioned earlier, where when you have a pixel installed on your site and you're able to capture those people that are coming to your site around a time like Giving Tuesday, you can continue to target them with ads after that, and you can create hyper-specific segments in Feathr based on what pages they visited and things like that to kind of really get personalized. So I'll let Michaela dive into a couple of examples of segments in Feathr.
Yeah, so these, there are a lot of ways to create groups in Feathr in different segments. So this is focusing specifically on like post Giving Tuesday, if you want to think about it that way. So what this top kind of left group is showing is what this shows is that we had folks who came to the donation page. They were seen within the project. So they were seen within the initiative of trying to raise funds, but they did not convert. So we're able to pull a group that says these are the people that fell into this group, and now we can retarget them with specific messaging.
And I think it's important to note here that this group is made up of 284 people. So that's like a smaller group, warm, highly specific. So that's just thinking about the way that you would speak to a group of 284 versus 202,000 people. It just becomes immediately easier to know what to say to them and how and where to reach them. So
right, exactly. Yeah, and there's lots of different, I mean, this is other than the data, obviously, I mean, this is one of my favorite features in Feathr because there's so many customizations that you can make. So to the right, this is another example of a segmented audience that I created in Feathr. So what this is saying is actually this captures the conversion, so the donors who fell between November 1st and December 31st. So basically within giving season. So now instead of just looking at everyone who's ever given to you over time, we're saying who gave to our organization during giving season, and now let's tailor messaging to them. And I think this specifically circles back to that thank you messaging, right? Like, thanks for being a part of the change. This is what we did. Here's our impact report, putting that in messaging to keep people engaged. I want to note too, I feel like pre-engagement and post-engagement is just as important as a call to action. Like, to keep people cultivated is worth spending dollars on, even if you're not getting that like direct hit, that direct ROI off of that. It leads to that later and helps build trust, like we've been talking about, helps people feel appreciated, makes them continue to understand your org, and ultimately, hopefully gets them to becoming a recurring donor or one of your major donors over time. Okay, one more. So let's talk about the bottom one. So what this group is saying, that we saw someone within this giving project, so within this fundraising project, they clicked an ad in the project, but they did not convert. So this is a little bit broader than that first example I gave you. This is saying they maybe didn't make it to your website at all, but they clicked. Like, they could have exited out, or they clicked, or maybe didn't stay on the page. Definitely, potentially didn't make it to your donation page at all, maybe only made it to your homepage. So we're saying this person engaged with us in some way, but they did not convert. Now what kind of messaging can we send them? So just slightly different than the first one because they didn't make it all the way to the donation page. They weren't super warm, but they have engaged with us. So they had to have been interested in something, right? So like, what was it? What can we reinforce here?
Cool. Well, that wraps things up. Just some quick closing thoughts here. So just want to reiterate that, the giving landscape has changed, as we've talked about, but the important thing is to think about what you can start doing today to make things easier, make it easier for people to give to your organization or to engage with you in some way that's more comfortable for them, that might over time cause them to make a donation down the line. And an impactful Giving Tuesday campaign obviously requires more than just email. So kind of leveraging website traffic, segmentation, multi-channel marketing to serve the right message to the right people at the right times to really get those potential donors to convert. And then, like we just talked about, you don't want to let Giving Tuesday be the last time someone hears from you, right? So if they're visiting your site and engaging with you, they're obviously interested. So retarget them, continue to engage over time, and hopefully they will become a donor down the line. So Thank you everyone again so much for joining. Real quick, again, if you found this helpful and would be interested to learn more about how Feathr can help you drive more donations for Giving Tuesday, drop a 1 in the chat. Like I said before, there's plenty of time to get set up with the platform, get started, and start seeing some great results from those awareness campaigns, nurturing people leading up to December 3rd. So drop a 1 if you would like to speak to someone about how Feathr can work for you. And if you are a Feathr customer and you are just interested in connecting with your customer success manager about, your Giving Tuesday plans, maybe coming up with a strategy, feel free to drop a 2 in the chat and we will connect you with your CSM. Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for the engagement and the questions in the chat. It's always nice to see that. And thanks again, Michaela, for joining. It's been so great to have you on here.
Thanks, Isa. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.